Oh, we
Uh-huh.
Mwah.
Da, 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 da. Soft kisses for everyone out there.
Yeah.
Okay. Do, 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 do. Da, da, da.
Oh,
Okay, here
yeah.
we go. And we're on in 3, 2, and 1. Well, Carolina gets back on the winning track, but they do it against Atlanta. So, what can we truly take away from that, Bloom? It's 19-13 here, Carolina versus Atlanta, and Panthers get the win. It's our first game we're going to recap here in the Week 8 recap here Monday morning. And, well, I just woke up, so let's talk about this. And, Bloom, we're going to do the recap a little differently. I'm just going to toss the game to you, honestly, because there were some stinkers. Some good games we'll really parse through.
Sure.
And then there's some stinkers that we want to get through quickly. Honestly thought Atlanta would win this one. We'd have the Calvin Ridley news, which is very important, I believe. And it's nice in this day and age where people can talk openly about mental health and their need to place that, primary, paramount, if you will. So, without Calvin Ridley now going forward, this is what Atlanta is going to look like. But Carolina fought back. They did it in a couple of different ways. So we'll go over this. From Fantasy Lens, you got some points from Chuba Hubbard. You got some points from Cordell Patterson, which we were expecting and we were figuring. Kyle Pitts only 2 for 13. So, 6 targets, though. So they tried to get him involved. Maybe they should try harder. Am I right, fellas? But again, this one, maybe not the most interesting one. So let's just throw both teams at you.
Yeah. And stepping through this, Chuba Hubbard, you're seeing this as a running back centric offense. Even Amir Abdullah, this is a running back centric offense. Christian McCaffrey may be on schedule to get back for this week's game against New England. But the passing game, even against Atlanta, there's not going to be much of a passing game here. Now, DJ Moore did have a touchdown. It was close. It didn't count. He would have had a better day, but he's not going to be a high ceiling receiver. Sam Darnold suffered a concussion here, so we have to watch that. Maybe we're going to see PJ Walker against New England. Fire up that New England defense, right? Hanging and see, here's how I characterize Carolina. They're good enough to beat bad teams, and they're good enough to beat teams on a bad day. But that's it. I mean, that's where this team is right now. And New England, well, we'll talk about New England, but yeah, that's not necessarily going to fall into either one of those categories. New England, pretty well-coached team. And hanging over this team, yes, they got to win, but it's all Deshaun Watson. I mean, that's just basically, this is the fork in the road they're at because it's not Sam Darnold. Is it going to be Deshaun Watson? It's not going to be Deshaun Watson before the trade deadline. It's probably not going to be anybody picking up Deshaun Watson before the trade deadline, but Carolina's been in that conversation. Now, on the Atlanta side, you have the Calvin Ridley. I'm going to leave that last talk about the specific Calvin Ridley issue, but it was a Mike Davis, Cordell Patterson offense. And part of that was, Panthers getting Stephon Gilmore and immediately use him on Kyle Pitts. And I think that we go 2 or 3 steps ahead, and now we're in a circle with the Kyle Pitts fantasy evaluation.
He got that pick covering Kyle Pitts, right?
Right, and just in general, Kyle Pitts, especially now, is going to get the centerpiece. He's the guy you're going to take away. Kyle Pitts is the guy you're going to take away. You're going to put your Stephon Gilmore or whoever the closest thing to Stephon Gilmore is on him. So in some ways, Kyle Pitts has arrived. Because he's arrived, that's making it more difficult to trust him in fantasy leagues, except in bad matchups. Again, New England next week. Yeah, Bill Belichick. I'm sorry, New England next week. New Orleans next week for them. New Orleans has Marshawn Lattimore, right? I mean, that's what you're going to do. You're going to treat him. So what was the appeal of Pitts in fantasy? Well, he's a tight end who really is a wide receiver. But if teams start treating him like that number one wide receiver, well, like so many other players in his first year, he's going to have to ramp up. He's going to have to understand that. There's a Pitts drop, a missed field goal. There were chances for Atlanta to win this one, even though their offense was not that good. And without Calvin Ridley, see, this is going to be a miserable offense. Sometimes we say, who wins for fantasy? Nobody wins for fantasy when Calvin Ridley is away from the team indefinitely. And you look ahead, and they have New Orleans, they have Dallas, they have New England. I mean, those are the next 3 games. I mean, they might be held in single digits in all those games. Let's talk about Calvin Ridley really quick, Cease. And I think that it absolutely is a good thing to hear this getting out in the vernacular. Self-care, right? Mental health, taking care of yourself, take care of your mentals, take care of your chicken, right? See, one of the reactions to this was, well, I bet what would happen if I called into work Monday and said mental health? Well, I hope that your workplace would be compassionate and say, yeah, we value you. You're not just a piece of machinery. You're a human being with a soul, and you have a lot of stresses from any number of sources. We all do. So, yeah, we know you're committed to this workplace. We know that you're contributing to this workplace. But if you say, I need time, well, isn't it in the workplace's best interest to have that person eventually like full as healed as possible and as capable as possible? So I would hope that, I mean, and unfortunately, these just get into like much larger discussions that we'll do on one of our other 187 podcasts.
Right.
But
we'll do when I am waking up.
Yeah. So I just hope that if anybody found themselves, and obviously this is a different situation because the NFL puts your mental health under major stresses that other jobs don't. But mainly, Cecil, I just want to say this: I hope that Calvin Ridley finds some peace during this time. I don't really care whether he plays football again.
No, that doesn't matter. It's the same thing with Josh Gordon when he was going through his problems. It's like, just get right, dude. Just get right. That's fine. Football doesn't matter. Like at the end of the day.
Exactly.
So let's move on from that one. And we've got Miami and Buffalo. Hey, there we go. Miami and Buffalo. It took a while, Bloom, for the Bills offense to get going.
Yeah.
Because early on in this game, you're like, I'm watching Red Zone, full disclosure. And I think I was doing a pregame show when this one was on. I was doing a pregame show when this one is on. But anyway, watching Red Zone, and I'm like, why is it 3-3 at halftime? Right. What's happening here? What's happening is, Miami doesn't do a whole lot. Tua's got a rushing touchdown to help his day. I really don't think it's Tua, honestly. Maybe Tua's not the greatest right now, but he's still learning. You see those flashes. Devontae Parker had a fantasy relevant day. Mike Gesicki had 3 for 48, which tight end you'll take. It's not the greatest. Jalen Waddle only 4 for 29. And then on the flip side, on the Bills side, finally things got going because Josh Allen got going. And he got going by throwing all over the place to Cole Beasley. Of course, Stephon Diggs was this guy too. Gabriel Davis got a touchdown. We could see Gabriel Davis do some more. Remember, we're dealing with no Dawson Knox. So we're like, is it going to be? And, Gabriel Davis is at the top of that list. You saw in the red zone, and Davis can make plays. So Allen with the rushing touchdown, with his ability as a runner and as a passer, Cole Beasley getting 100 yards. That's how the Bills finally got jump-started. But it was one of those games where Josh Allen just put the team on his back.
Yeah, and for fantasy, what you have to love here is that even though it was a very slow start, he was still outstanding. The Bills are outstanding. On the Miami side, we see Devontae Parker come back, and all of a sudden your Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki shares don't look quite as good. It's not that your Parker shares are great. And also we saw, remember, Tua was looking good against Jacksonville, against Atlanta. Buffalo, not exactly a shutdown defense, but a defense that's going to make things come a lot harder. So you did have, a fourth quarter or second half attempt to tighten this game up a little bit, but you also saw, as they're trying to tighten it up, as a discombobulated play on fourth down, Mike Gesicki runs into the snap. And that, it's just a model, a moment where this is where they're at. You would have to think that this is an offense that against good defenses, or at least defenses that make you have to make disciplined, good plays, this is how it's going to go for this Miami offense. Myles Gaskin was okay. And that's the whole thing, right? On the flip side, when they play bad defenses, Tua might look pretty good. And I think you're right to say that, hey, Tua is about where he should be as a second-year quarterback developing. This is where our perceptions and everything, expectations, really makes it a lot harder on these young quarterbacks because we're very unfair to them because of someone like Justin Herbert, who maybe will be unfair to him. So the Texans are coming from a fantasy standpoint. This is going to be a better offense next week. But at the same time, this is another team going nowhere. I don't know what the plan is. Remember, they don't have their first-round pick next year. So what's happening? See, we're getting to that point in the season now where there are certain teams that are just going to kind of be on autopilot. We know that this season's not going to bear any fruit for them. Buffalo, on the other hand, like you said, a turbulent start. There was a lot of long drives by Miami. in the first half. So that's why Buffalo's defense maybe contributed to the quiet start for the offense. Zach Moss got stopped on short yards. There was a sack, another sack that ended a drive. But then you see Josh Allen start to take over, like throwing a touchdown to Gabriel Davis while someone's pulling on his face mask. You finally get something from Diggs. You get a big game from Cole Beasley with no Dawson Knox, who could be back next week. Because, by the way, it's Jacksonville. So a goose egg from Manuel Sanders. You'll take that. Again, the bottom line is, for a half, this offense really didn't do anything. And you wouldn't know it. If you just checked in on your fantasy team, you have Josh Allen, you think, well, it was another good week for Josh Allen. It was a good half for Josh. Yeah, a good half. And a good team. Buffalo, I think, we can certainly look forward to a Buffalo team that, while there's been so many ups and downs for teams, we'll go through some of them. Buffalo says, hey, we're a contender, and we can take care of business against the teams we need to.
Now, I may just be waking up, Bloom, which says a lot about me. Thanks, everyone, for being so forgiving every morning.
Yeah, every day of our lives.
I'm not a morning person. But when we say half, we're supposed to say half Eddie.
Half Eddie.
Yeah, they were good for a half Eddie. So there you go. Next up, we have the 49ers over the Bears. Okay, 49ers. I guess Jimmy Garoppolo, like, trying to prove I could be the runner. I could rush it in. I can do it, boss. Like, okay, Jimmy, calm down. You got the job. So instead of seeing any sort of Trey Lance package, we get Jimmy Garoppolo running in for 2 touchdowns. We get Elijah Mitchell with over 100 yards and a touchdown. Debo's everything. Debo's on my Mutt team. Madden Ultimate Team, 6 for 171 in this one. So they win 33-22. We had a feeling the 49ers would do that. There was part of me, though, I was hoping Khalil Herbert with another strong day, by the way, 70-plus yards. Jesse James gets the receiving touchdown. Justin Fields over 100 yards and a rushing touchdown. And Bloom, that's where my mind mainly goes because, Ayuk did something too. But, of course, love Debo, Eli, we're telling everybody to pick up and start. They should have already had him and start him. The Garoppolo thing's interesting. But to me, there was part of me hoping, you get into that game mode and you're like, well, I picked the 49ers to win. But could this be like Justin Fields? And remember, the Bears without Matt Nagy.
Right.
Prepare for future games without Matt Nagy.
Right.
But Fields looked good. He was energized on that rushing touchdown, right? And it was a 4th down. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
4th down. He stumbles after the RPO fake. He's just going to the right. Stumbles, kind of comes back, hesitates. Then he takes off to the left. Then he breaks through. And now all of a sudden, 4th and 1 or whatever it was, all of a sudden now it's a touchdown. And Fields is spiking the ball, flexing.
Yeah.
It was just one of those moments where you're seeing the birth of a great young quarterback. You know what I mean? And I was hoping, even though I'd picked the 49ers and I thought they'd win, and I don't like Matt Nagy and he wasn't there anyway, but I was hoping this would be the start of Justin Fields. This is when it all starts. And maybe it does start, Bloom, with the use of his legs, but they didn't get the win. So that was a little bit of a bummer. But the 49ers put it on them eventually.
Yeah, and we'll see. The 49ers kind of have a last gasp coming out of this game. The Bears, another team that we can see isn't necessarily going anywhere. On the San Francisco side, at first, the San Francisco defense could not get off of the field against the Bears. Khalil Herbert, a big part of that. And they were settling for field goals. This is why we come up short with Jimmy Garoppolo. Trey Lance is healthy again. But then Garoppolo really came alive in the second half, and some of it's Deebo Samuel after the catch. My, oh my. See, a lot of talk about Cooper Kupp as deserved. Deebo Samuel has
Deebo gets that.
Yeah, Deebo gets the Keanu kiss. Deebo has exceeded expectations about as much as you could in a year that it wasn't Cooper Kupp's year. We would be talking about him as a fantasy MVP. And yes, Garoppolo and sees all of these players while we're talking about these games. There's our fantasy teams and our fantasy stocks, but each of these teams, coaches, and players are all on their own epic story that's being written. And Jimmy Garoppolo showed something in this one. Like you said, it was running it in. getting those 2 touchdowns in short yardage. But we don't think of Garoppolo as like toughness and putting his body on the line, or we think of him as someone who injuries linger, or maybe he's not going to play through things other players play through. So I think that was a big deal. And then we want to talk about Mitchell. And remember, they're going to get George Kittle back soon. So again, this team just needs it. Next week, by the way, San Francisco gets Arizona. So that's a big moment for them. And we'll see if Kyler Murray's playing or Kyler Murray's even 100%. Remember last year, he went through that period midseason when he wasn't 100%, wasn't producing as much. And it could make the Cardinals a more beatable team and keep the pulse going for this San Francisco team. On the last thing here, I just want to say, look, if you emptied your waiver wire wallet in week 1 for Elijah Mitchell, you were right. You were right. Good move. Right? I mean, he's the lead back. He's still the back. It's week 8 season, and he's still the lead back starter. He's coming off of 2 big games, one against a defense that doesn't give up big games to running backs usually. So if you would have said when everyone was emptying the wallet for Mitchell Cease, that come week 8, he'd still be the clear starter, getting like 80% of the touches in the backfield. That's all you could have asked for. Yeah, that's all. Yeah. That's all you could have asked for. So I just want to say, let's think about this in hindsight when we go back in future years. Sometimes that week 1 it works, and it has worked. Big statement game coming up on the Chicago side. Khalil Herbert looked good, got a little banged up, but he's made a statement for himself. Fields was better, or at least looked a little more comfortable in that running play. And you're right, Cecil. You saw him soaking in the adoration from the Bears fans, the stadium. It was almost like he forgot what that felt like, right? Yeah. He forgot what it felt like to do something remarkable on the field.
Of playing football.
Right. And they didn't get the win out of it, but it gives hope for the future for Bears fans and for him, and certainly for Fields as a fantasy entity going forward, although maybe not this week. He's Monday night, Justin Fields goes to Heinz Field.
Heinz Field. Perfect transition, Bloom. You must have looked at the schedule because we have Steelers and Browns. That is our next game up here on the week 8 waiver wire. And the Steelers get the win 15-10. The final score. Steelers are 4-3. The Browns are 4-4. Baker, the baby maker, was back and he was fighting. He was taking some big hits, man. Some big hits. What was the one with Minka? Did Minka get him out of bounds?
Yeah.
And they didn't call it. And then he just got up and he was like, first down. I was like,
yeah.
Don't throw your shoulder out, buddy. When everyone does that big first down exaggeration, it's like, no, take it easy there, buddy. So it was good to see him. Hey, buddy, it was good to see him out there. Good to see that Dearness Johnson's still involved, right? Behind Nick Chubb. We got that touchdown from Dearness Johnson. Jarvis Landry, because Odell Beckham Jr. didn't do anything. There was like a key moment late in the game. Was it a 3rd down, 4th down, Bloom drive? They're trying to keep a drive alive, like big play. He goes for the one-handed catch. He's going to get crushed. I think it was Minka. Minka was everywhere. Minka's always everywhere. And like he just dropped it. So he went for the one-handed, like Odell catch. And no, Minka was like, And Odell kind of sensed that, so he dropped that. But, so you saw Landry with some drops, had that fumble, right? Okay, so that caused some complications there. Nick Chubb was back. That's good. He did enough. All right, I know.
Right.
Scott Hansen on Red Zone, he's like, he had a bad day. I'm like, well, it's 61 yards, okay? Like, I know we're all greedy in fantasy football, but let's discuss this. You saw Deontay Johnson. Steelers kept swinging. Late in the game, kept going to Johnson. He's making big plays. Chase Claypool didn't do quite as much as you'd want. Freiermuth gets the touchdown. We can talk about that. Najee, they uncorked Najee in 26 for 91 and a rushing touchdown. Like, it's the intent of running the ball. It's not necessarily the success. It doesn't have to be 100 yards. But if you have that intent, it set things up. And in an ugly win, you can win ugly. And in an ugly game, you can win ugly. And, well, that's kind of what the Steelers have to do. In fact, Bloom, it's their best recipe.
Yeah, they've embraced it as their identity. It goes back to week 1 and the win over Buffalo, right?
Yeah.
Take the Pittsburgh side first. What a weird game. Mike Tomlin, and we love Mike Tomlin, but you really call a fake field goal down in the red zone when your team has a good defense? And you're playing don't turn the ball over safe offense, you call a fake field goal? So not only does it not work, on a field goal that's a chip shot, okay, Chris Boswell gets hurt. Now you don't have a kicker. And they really don't have a kicker. They don't have an emergency kicker. So now they had to go for 2 from the 12-yard line. There was a penalty on the first attempt. Roethlisberger dove in. They had to go. So there were situations in this game where not having a kicker, it could have cost them the game. All right?
Yeah.
It didn't. It didn't, because this is a Steelers team that has a lot of fight. Look, Roethlisberger's going
Well,
to
didn't
play.
Presley have that one kickoff that went out of bounds?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I felt so bad.
I know. Because he was pressed into duty. But look, it's late career Peyton Manning when he won a Super Bowl. Not that Roethlisberger can win a Super Bowl, but just play it safe. Don't turn the ball over. You play within yourself. There's still moments where you see Roethlisberger try to force the ball into triple coverage like he did once in this game. Like, come on, man. No. Let's take all those plays out of the playbook now. And what you have is Ben to Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson had a 50-yarder to help clinch this one. Not as much from Chase Claypool. It's Najee Harris. And what you hope here is the defense makes plays. You get some first downs. You grind out some long drives. And then you also had Pat Freiermuth with Eric Ebron was out for this one. Zach Gentry actually made a few plays. Maybe they get some out of that fifth-round pick. But Freiermuth got the touchdown that was the difference in this game, and it was a 50-50 ball that he made a tremendous play on, ball skills wise, contested catch wise, some awareness of the back of the end zone, Roethlisberger trusting him, and it was one of those places where like they aren't going to kick a field goal at this point. They were down 10-9, and there was no field goal really available for them, even a chip shot, because the kicker was out, and it was a massive play by Freiermuth. And again, with Chicago coming, the Steelers are hanging around and say, hey, let's just try to get in the playoffs, try to be a tough out. Okay, adjusting expectations for the season, but actually, when you look at their losses now, not so bad, right? Green Bay, Vegas, Cincinnati, those aren't bad losses. This is a good win. A bad loss for the Browns, not a bad loss, like a tough to swallow loss in the sense that the Steelers were going to be a tough out in this one, but these are the kind of games that the Browns need to win. Man, you look at some of the tight games that the Browns have lost now, and you just see how close this season is to maybe being a much better season. Nick Chubb, the Steelers were up to stopping him. They stopped him on fourth down in a key play in this game, and otherwise, they were just up to the challenge of Nick Chubb. You saw one, I got to call this out, he's Dearness Johnson. Oh my, I think was it Bush and Fitzpatrick? It was Bush and somebody that had him dead to rights on that outside stretch zone run play. And he made such a skillful cut that to the end of the play, it was a touchdown. You saw Devin Bush just with his hands out and his palms in the air like, what can I do about that? And you don't think of Dearness Johnson as one of the most sudden backs in the league, but it was a tremendous play, and it accounted for the only offensive touchdown. Odell Beckham, oh man, he's past shut him down, Cease. I mean, he's shut down from the shut him down segment at this point.
He's throw the damn towel. That's what he is.
It's just sad because I think the ability is there, but it's just not there. It is there for Jarvis Landry, but he's playing hurt. And a key play again, this is going to be a sick to your stomach loss for the Browns because they were driving again in the fourth quarter and Landry fumbles.
And didn't it seem like a classic, like, oh, here the Steelers are going to let this one get away, right? Didn't you have that feeling?
Oh, yeah. And it's much like that first week Buffalo win where the Steelers made the plays they needed to make, and they relish being on the road. You could see the Steelers being powered by the hate, powered by the energy and the determination to push back against them. And you could really see that team embracing this identity. So Landry, there were some plays at the end where he's their number one receiver. Make no doubt about it for fantasy going forward, but he's banged up. He's not quite 100%, and he's giving it all, but there's just some plays that he's not able to finish, and then including that fumble that really was one of the difference in the game. Now Cleveland, and man, the ups and downs already. We're only 8 weeks into the season, but this team, week one, whenever they were toe-to-toe with Kansas City, we thought, okay, this team's here. Well, what does that even mean now, right? We don't even know what that means. What we know is the classic cross-state rivalry with Cincinnati this week when they're going to Cincinnati. Obviously, both teams are at crossroads, but Cleveland has gotten to that point in their season now where there's not a lot of margin of error. So there's going to be some stress, some intense meaning and purpose to that game for both teams.
Well, I said throw the damn towel earlier. I actually was just previewing the Eagles and Lions. Oh boy. Okay, everybody. Eagles and Lions is up next and 44-6. And it doesn't mean much about the Eagles. It's like, really, what did we learn?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you can beat up on the hapless Lions 44-6. Okay, everyone to celebrate, I guess. Not really. I mean, Hurts didn't get a rushing touchdown or a passing touchdown.
Right.
You saw 2 touchdowns from Boston Scott. Okay, we had talked about that. Scott get those high value, carries. And Jordan Howard comes in and gets 2 rushing touchdowns. Like, okay, it's like Daffy Duck's magic trick. Like, it's okay, it'll happen once. So, should we be chasing Jordan Howard on the waiver wire? I'm not personally, 1% or whatever, Bloom.
Right.
We can talk about that. We'll have waiver wire show tomorrow. Dallas Goedert, 72 yards. So there you go. Came through for you. I don't think you should be relying, even against the Lions. Maybe threw in Devontae Smith as like, what that flex got you a catch. You know what I mean? Jared Goff's terrible regularly. DeAndre Swift, well, he's trying. It was Jamar Jefferson. That got the rushing touchdown. So you're like, oh my God. Hawkinson gets 10 for 89. Okay, good, right? Our man Khalif Raymond, friend of the show, no catches, right?
Yeah.
So again, this is one of those things, and it's one of those games. As I was thinking about this show, Bloom, as I always think about you, I was like, there's no way in hell I want to like parse through Eagles and Lions, because what the hell did we actually learn?
Yeah, again, fantasy football's stupid, right? The Eagles finally have a good game, a good big win, and Jalen Hurts is a bust for fantasy. Yeah, you're gonna stick with him though. Again, this is another Eagles team that we know this version of this team isn't really going anywhere long term. But Boston Scott gets a couple of touchdowns, Jordan Howard gets a couple of touchdowns, Kenny Gainwell just not even. I mean, his role got smaller. Maybe some of it's the game script, but we talking about him in a shut him down segment. It's actually Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert was the guy that Hurts was zeroed in on. So maybe there's some chemistry developing there. Maybe next week against the Chargers, nothing, right? And because, by the way, it is the Chargers, maybe we have a little momentum for Boston Scott there. Jalen Reagor got hurt, by the way. There was a little pop pass that almost looked like a touchdown. Reagor goes down just short of the goal line and gets hurt in this one. So maybe that narrows the target tree a little bit if Reagor misses time, but we're not trusting Devontae Smith. We're not trusting Quez Watkins. Maybe we're trusting Dallas Goedert because of his position. Maybe we're trusting Boston Scott because of the matchup and because of the 2 touchdowns. Like you said, Howard was just the game script. On the Detroit side, this was a game, they have a chance to win. Like maybe they can play this team straight up. But this happened against Cincinnati. They come home. They have these efforts where it's just everything but the kitchen sink, right? And then what's left? And see, some of this comes back to how much longer do you play Jared Goff? Okay, you wanted to try to create some trade value. You thought we can show what's good about him. And you get the feeling here that Dan Campbell and probably a lot of the internal locker room leaders want to keep playing with a lot of heart and let's hang on, scratch, nail, bite the kneecaps. But how can you do that when Jared Goff's your quarterback? Jared Goff's not bringing that energy, right?
When you're afraid that'll go away too. That's my one fear. It's not necessarily a Lions fan, Bloom, but just as someone who I just appreciate their fight.
Yeah.
What happens now, because players love winning more than anything.
Right.
More than anything, more than stats or whatever. Like, no, they love winning. And that message will go by the wayside, especially because Jared Goff's still your quarterback.
Right. So they go into the bye. I wonder if they're going to talk about that. Jamal Williams, a scratch for this one. I think he was expected to play. You saw more Jamar Jefferson. And Jefferson gets the garbage time touchdown, not DeAndre Swift, because the game just got so far out of hand. That's the problem. DeAndre Swift didn't do much for you in fantasy for this one because the Lions didn't have that game where they hang and they scratch and they claw, and it's actually meaningful because maybe there's a wing and a prayer chance for them to come back in this one. TJ Hawkinson, like you said, Cecil, there's some hope with TJ Hawkinson. I mean, it's almost like the worse the team is, the better it is for Hawkinson in fantasy. So what can you say? I mean, it's certainly been a more compelling, interesting story watching the Lions this year than we ever could have expected. But this is where it ends up about where we expected going into the bye.
Yeah, and this is where we end up because our next game is incredible. It's Tennessee and it's Indianapolis. This is one of those games that the vibration from this game is so monumental. It changes the season. It changes the season.
Yeah,
that's what we witnessed. Okay. And we're going to get into all those changes, but the the collision of these two. It's like two planets hitting each other, right? And literally, when we're
nuclear
talking about
fission.
Derrick Henry, we'll get to Derrick Henry in a little bit, but this game just so blankety blank epic. 34-31. The Titans get the win in overtime, but Bloom, at what cost? At what cost? A.J. Brown, 155 and a touchdown, and everyone else, nobody's starting Westbrook Akinney or Jeff Swain. Nobody's starting him. But anyway, so we have the Derrick Henry issue to get to. We did see Michael Pittman Jr. with a couple of touchdowns. Good. T.Y. Hilton out there, he's trying so hard, man.
Yeah.
He's getting hit, and I'm like, dude, neck. When you get a neck injury, it's just like, oh, just no, please be careful. Be very careful, T.Y. Hilton. Jonathan Taylor gets the touchdown. So Wentz is out there and at regulation, right? They're backed up in the end zone, and Wentz is going to throw, and you're thinking, oh, this is something. And then boom, here you go. Wentz with a turnover. Okay, that's it. No, it's not. They keep fighting back. And again, Carson Wentz is tough to root for. But there was a lot of fight in this one. Ryan Tannehill getting the hell beat out of him.
Yeah.
Just getting the hell beat out of him. Standing in there, slinging it, trying to run, trying to keep plays alive. So this is a huge one. In fact, if we did most of the show on this game, or we just said, here's the scores from the game, this is the game we got to talk about for an hour, we could easily do that because this game was epic.
Yeah, it was. And the Colts had that classic backs against the wall feeling, right? And the Titans, they've played like that already. I mean, they just beat Buffalo and Kansas City, right? So, hey, the Titans going into this one, they were ready because the first time around, remember, they beat Indy summarily, but they didn't have a healthy Wentz. All right, let's take the Tennessee side. We'll do like the Tennessee side, the Indy side, and then just talk about the game. Okay, Derrick Henry, there's a point in this game where you see him on the sidelines without a shoe on. That's ominous. He comes back in and carries the ball 26 more times. I mean, maybe we'll get a post-mortem on this. Maybe we won't see. Did he already have the broken foot? Did he say, hey, my foot doesn't feel good? Fifth metatarsal, I think. We'll talk to Dr. Gene about this. But was it already broken at that point? Was it maybe uncomfortable? And if they had been a little wiser, maybe we wouldn't be talking about a season-ending injury. You know, again, they're determining whether surgery. Come on. It's not. Even if Derrick Henry were to play through his injury, would that be a good thing? How long would it last? Would he look the same? Right. I mean, it's so. You know who popped up, Cease, by the way? Will Carroll. Good old Will Carroll. Love you, Will. You're still the OG, man.
Yeah, for sure.
You're still the OG. Rule 370. We scoff at it. I don't know. I mean, some people saying, hey, this is an overuse injury. And then there's also the mathematics. Like if you just give running backs more carries, there's more chances for something fluky to happen. Oh, it's just a fluke injury. Yeah, but the more carries, the more chances that something fluky will happen. So, look, there's a lot of interesting fantasy discussion here. And by the way, already, Cease, we hear, guess who the Titans are working out?
Adrian Peterson.
Adrian Peterson. See, the NFL season says, oh, it's like
now it's more Adrian Peterson.
Right, and it's like an opera, right? It's like, dun, 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 like death music, but then like, oh, coming out of the smoke of the death of the carnage is like, well, Adrian Peterson. Wow, could there be a running back with a better mentality to plug right in for Derrick Henry? A.J. Brown looked amazing, by the way. A.J. Brown making plays. So this game was ridiculous. This game had more twists and turns. It was ridiculous. The Titans were dead in the water early on in this game. And there was a couple of turning points. One was Tyquan Lewis. Oh my, Cease. I don't even know if I can remember another play like this. Tyquan Lewis drops back. Some of Ryan Tannehill's interceptions have just been terrible this year. Tyquan Lewis, who's a defensive lineman, drops into coverage. And Tannehill basically throws the ball right to him. So your defensive lineman dropping into coverage, you get an interception right away. A big man, ball in the hands. Let's go. Mm-hmm. And he has a non-contact injury, and the classic non-contact injury where you just drop the ball on the ground. Like obviously he's in pain. He just lets the ball go, and I think his teammates were even coming to be like, "Yeah, you did it." No, he fumbled. Just a fumble, not a forced fumble. My season's over. He gets carted off. And that was really a turning point in this game. And then, you love seeing teams going for fourth down more often, but one of the fourth downs, again, when it seemed like the Colts were in control, they went downfield to Michael Pittman. Maybe got a little cute with it, tried to get a big play out of fourth down instead of just getting the first down. And then the Titans, even after all that, so the Titans tighten the game back up. Haha. A.J. Brown making plays. Ryan, this is a tough team, such a mentally tough team. Mike Vrabel, right? But at the end of the game, now let's go over to the Indy side. Carson Wentz he gifts the game to them twice. See, there was someone that said Carson Wentz with the worst play of the year, and someone said, I think it was Greg Rosenthal, you'll have to be more specific. Right? Because he, in his own end zone, so 24-24 late in the game, Titans pin on a punt, the Colts back. Wentz is in his own end zone. It looks like he's going to take a safety. So that he does not take the safety as he's getting pulled down, he just throws the ball up in the air. And, of course, you know what happens then. It gets intercepted for a touchdown. But then he drives them back to make it 31-31 and take it to overtime. But he's not done yet. And throws another gift interception. And that's it. That's it. Michael Pittman, in the meantime, Michael Pittman is stepping up. Jonathan Taylor. I mean, that's this offense. So you can see, I don't know if Wentz is the answer, but I think Taylor and Pittman are the answer. So those pair, sure. And where is it going to lead to? Is this team going to ever get over the hump? Are they going to win a couple of playoff games and actually get into the power circle of the AFC? I don't know, but those was the first pick of the second round, and then I think that Taylor was a couple of picks later. Yeah, there's your foundational players for this offense going forward. They sure look like it. So you look at this Indy team. They're going to play the Jets. So on one hand, they lose this game. They got swept by the Titans. On the other hand, the point of the spear is broken for the Titans. And the Colts have to feel like, well, why not us? Here are their losses, Cease, other than this. The other Baltimore. The Baltimore game they had so many different ways. The Rams game. They had it. So, if this team falls short at this point, also with the football gods somehow, I don't want to say they're smiling on them, but it's an enemy of my enemy or something like that. And this team could still be in control right now, just inexplicable losses. And yet this game had everything, Cease. This game had everything. And like you said, the Richter scale, the ripple effects, the plate tectonics from this game, we're going to feel for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it was monumental.
By the way, Tennessee plays the Rams. Oh.
Hooey. There you go. Okay. Is Todd Gurley doing anything?
Right.
Okay. Let's move on from that one. It's almost like we need a smoke break.
Yeah.
Watch the chat room go nuts with that one. Smoke break.
Right. Smoke if you got him.
Okay, next one is Bengals and Jets. Bengals and Jets. Oh, boy. What a world, what a world. The Jets get the win 34-31 over Cincinnati, and they do it with Mike White. Okay, and there's some of these games where you get to see that love of football, right? Mm-hmm. Or that joy in playing like we talked about with Justin Fields. You saw that with Mike White. You saw him, whether it was his 2-point conversion, whether, with any of the touchdowns you mentioned, like he was out there, he was having fun. So the reference points, what can we learn? Well, Cincinnati's defense, you got problemas, and again, how many times have we said this in the AFC this year, Bloom? Someone gets to the top of the mountain, right, and we're like, look at
pull
this
you
team.
Back down.
Oh my God, then they lose to the Jets. So that happened to the Bengals. Burrow with 3 touchdowns and 259 on the air. Boyd gets involved. He's still around, right?
Yeah.
Especially on some key downs as well. There were some key throws to keep drives alive where Tyler Boyd was the intended target. Jamar Chase gets a touchdown, but only 3 for 32. Again, fantasy GMs are greedy there. Mixon battling it out, 2.4 yards per carry. 1 rushing touchdown, and that's perhaps the data point we can look at, Bloom, and say, attack Mixon, make sure they don't get that thing started, and then they won't have the intent. Only 16 carries as a team in this one, 14 for Mixon, and then nothing for anybody else. Mike White throws for 405 yards, right. 3 touchdowns, couple of picks. You see Michael Carter emerging. that 95 yards receiving, 77 yards rushing, 1 rushing touchdown. He still can't pass protect, and you're not going to run him between the tackles. But the way they're using him, Bloom, who cares?
Right.
Right? Who cares? Ty Johnson with maybe the prettiest touchdown of the season. Right, the big man getting a tippy toe and then diving in for the end zone. So 71 yards receiving and a receiving touchdown. Croft gets a touchdown. Barrios gets a touchdown. So, we get to see Josh Johnson comes in,
right,
almost has one, and oh my God, Denzel, please, like you don't fit the system. Denzel Mims, I think, is still a good player. He needs to go to a team like, I don't know, San Francisco, although
Kansas
that's the
City.
same system. Kansas City would be a better system for him. So Denzel gets a throw from Josh Johnson, our friend, and hits him in the face or whatever. Or I think it was the shoulder pad, right? Shoulder. Right. He lets it into his body. Either way, it's like, Denzel, come on, dude. So this one is a back and forth. It's a surprise, right? Nobody was picking the Jets in this one, especially with Mike White. They're going to start Mike White. And then it makes you think, well, why did they get Joe Flacco?
Right, in hindsight.
Right? Yeah, so a fun game to talk about, full of surprises, Bloom.
Yeah, it's a reminder that any given Sunday, it's a reminder of how emotional this game is. It's a reminder of how teams from a week-to-week basis, we think it's just like the players. We think we get a bead on these players and their range of outcomes in any given week, but what we underestimate is the how wide the range of outcomes is. And then you have these things match up because Cincinnati, both on offense and on defense against Baltimore, looked like they were they were the number 1 seed. And in hindsight, Cecil, isn't that the beginning of the horror movie trailer for the Bengals fans, for Joe Goodberry and everyone out there? Mm-hmm. The Bengals enter the week as the number 1 seed in the AFC. Oh, it puts shivers down your spine. Oh, no. What's in the closet that's going to jump out? And it was the Jets. So here's one of the plays that gave you an idea that this was going to be a different kind of day on Halloween. Jesse Bates gets an interception, returns it down to the 1, and the Bengals can't punch it in. The Bengals can't get the touchdown. They go for it on 4th down, and Quinnen Williams, who's a fine player, that pick's worked out, sacks Joe Burrow on 4th down. And then they get another interception and they get a touchdown, right? So you go through on the fantasy, it was all there except for Jamar Chase, who still got a touchdown. Boyd was there. Higgins was making some plays downfield. Mixon got a couple touchdowns. Zama even, is a part of this offense. But the Jets won't go away. And it's really the Bengals defense that lets this happen. Or we'll talk about Mike White and the Jets offense that we underestimated. But still, it was 34-31 late. And the Jets were winning, but the Bengals just had to get a stop, and Joe Burrow was going to get a chance to do a stirring comeback win late. Mike Hilton, who I still love, always be a Steeler in my heart, Cease. Mike Hilton gets a call on one of the worst lowering your helmet calls. It was the offensive player that lowered his helmet. Mm-hmm. It was a terrible call. It was a terrible call in any context, but as a call that takes away a team's last chance to be in a game, it was a horrible call. But it shouldn't take the Bengals off the hook, because you should not be in a position against the Jets where a call is going to decide the game. You're a better team than that. So we see this team, depending on the week that you're watching them, you're not sure where they're at in their growth curve. But this hopefully will be one that pushes them. Again, the Cleveland game next week. Now on the Jets side, boy, we got questions. Questions. Could it be that this whole time Mike LaFleur in this offense was actually a pretty good offense, and Zach Wilson's just not running it? Zach Wilson's just not running the offense. Because Mike White made himself a lot of money on this day. Go ahead, Cease.
Yeah, well, and we know that system. That system's good. It's a Shanahan system. It's a good system. You run it, and you'll have success. And, well, now we have preguntas, Bloom. Questions.
Yeah, we have questions because, you go back to Zach Wilson. I know he's your franchise quarterback, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But this just looked like night and day for this offense. It isn't just that Mike White was so much better than any of us knew, right? So from a fantasy standpoint, now we're interested, right? I'm like, okay, they're playing Indy next week. Okay. Well, what you saw here was Jamison Crowder racking up catches. Like we talked about, like we saw Mike White got in last week. It's Carter and it's Johnson out of the backfield, but also Carter getting some things done. By the way, Keelan Cole had one of the best catches you will see all year, and they originally counted as a touchdown, and then they took it off the board because he hit the ground and the ball moved or something like that. It was 80% of the famous Odell Beckham play, maybe 90% of it, and they didn't give it to him. So we love Keelan Cole. This team last week, Cease, got beat 54-13, and they've beaten the Titans and the Bengals. They beat the Titans and Bengals, who has taken turns as maybe that's the team in the AFC, and they both have lost to the Jets. This is part of what keeps us tuned in. It's part of why fantasy football is so frustrating. It's part of why, again, we can't ever forget the emotional part of this game. You feel good for Robert Saleh. You feel good for this organization, knowing that, hey, it's one thing to have the moral victories that the Lions have had. It's another thing to say, like, hey, we can beat the number one seed in the division, in the conference. We can beat the Titans with Derrick Henry, even though they didn't have the receivers. Still, the point is they're building something here. And it's slow, and it's brick by brick. Maybe one of the bricks is Mike White. Certainly, you can see more of this offense coming to light. So much to think about here. And for the Bengals, Cease, I think that the Bengals, their story is still intact. What do you learn from this? What do you take away from this so that you don't let it happen again, especially on the defensive side of the ball? So, yeah, you had this game going on. You had that Indy-Tennessee game going on. And it just really shows you the game of inches and how then those things ripple out into the emotional effects or the otherwise, how these wins teams can either choose, and losses they can choose to be demoralized by it, or they can see it as something that they can learn from and grow from. We'll see again what the Bengals do next week against the Browns.
It's like the Bengals are fighting their opponent, but they're also fighting their reputation. Their history, right?
Yeah.
Their team history of bungling things. Because I tell you, when Burrow gets that ball back after the Mike White, I think it was the Mike White where he had the 2-point thing and was super celebrating or whatever. And you just saw Burrow, and I felt a sense of like, oh, Burrow's got this.
Yeah.
Like let Mike White, hey kid, enjoy your time. Good game. Now I'm going to come out and I'm gonna beat your ass. Mm-hmm. And we didn't get to see that. So Burrow, there's a mountain that the Bengals are fighting, Bloom, that is their history, right? Yeah. And that's a mountain they have to still climb. As Darren says in the chat room, football is weird.
Yeah.
So we go from epic clashes, right? We talk Colts and Titans. We talk to Bengals and Jets, not really epic clash, but a better game than we thought. And then we get Rams and Texans. Okay. Rams and Texans, what does that mean? This show means we should go through it quickly, I guess.
Right.
Matthew Stafford with 3 touchdowns, and Darrell Henderson with a big day, and Cooper Kupp does his thing, and Robert Woods gets a touchdown. Van Jefferson makes a nice waiver wire flex pickup if you put him in, and Henderson with a couple of touchdowns there. Robert Woods himself with a couple of touchdowns as well. Texans in garbage time. Davis Mills has some fight in this one. There's something building there. So when Tyrod is healthy, should he be your starter? I don't think so. Not the way Davis Mills is playing. Brandon Cooks get a touchdown late in this one. Brevin Jordan, super deep dynasty. Keep an eye out. Kind of a little favorite. I can't remember what Matt thought of Brevin Jordan, but little favorite of mine. So, super deep dynasty. Let's keep an eye out there. And then, of course, they trade away Mark Ingram. So you're thinking maybe that means something for David Johnson and Phillip Lindsay. No, they still have Rex Burkhead. Who gets the garbage time rushing touchdown, and nobody started. So 38-22, Rams win. No surprise. Let's get through this one.
Yeah, really the gambling side of this piece might be one of the more interesting takeaways from this one. Like you said, it's Houston, Stafford, Kupp, Henderson, check. Van Jefferson gets that deep ball, gets a little bit banged up, but he's the deep target now. Sean Jackson actually inactive for this one. We'll see if he can get traded. Even Bobby Trees, Robert Woods getting the rushing touchdown in addition. It's still not a big day in terms of volume, but he gets a receiving touchdown too, so it's a big one for the Rams, and they take care of business. At one point it was like 38-3 in this one. By the way, Tennessee coming next week. Tennessee going through the rubble of their season, probably without Derrick Henry. Brandon Cooks comes through in garbage time. The fantasy football gods mocked anybody who said, maybe there's something in this Texans backfield without Mark Ingram now, right? No. Although maybe one of them could get traded to the Titans. Doubt it. So Phillip Lindsay, David Johnson, none of the above. The answer was none of the above. But this game was 38-3, Cease. The spread was 16.5. We're all going to be a lot more aware of this stuff. Not every now and then, like Brent Musburger, like back in the day, there were certain announcers that were very much aware of the lines.
Yes.
And when there was those backdoor covers, this is one of the worst backdoor covers ever, though. It ended up being 38-22, so you're 16 and a half points. You were right. You were right to take the Rams in this one. You were right, and fantasy football is stupid. Gambling on football is stupid. Watching football is awesome. Talking about football with Cecil is awesome, with all you people, of course, joining us. And let's get back to some awesome games.
Let's get back to some awesome games. We're trying. Patriots and Chargers. That one's pretty awesome, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that one. And Patriots side. Well, I guess both sides. That's what we're doing today.
Yeah.
And 27-24. So the Chargers now sitting at 4-3. Okay, that's good. You should have a couple more wins on that on that docket. What are your ducats? Let's talk about Mac Jones, couple 100 yards, whatever. Nelson Aguilar, few people started him, maybe. Damian Harris, you start him, rushing touchdown there. The Herbert side's interesting. Keenan Allen with the touchdown. Joshua Palmer with the touchdown. Austin Eckler starting himself in his own fantasy team.
Yeah,
Boom. So
good week.
It was a little hip thing, right? And everyone's like, "Oh, is Eckler going to play?" Well, then it was released. I think it was our friend Matthew Berry who was like, Austin Eckler started himself in his own fantasy team. So, he should be good to go. You see a big run from Justin Jackson here. Mike Williams only a couple catches. So that one, losing a little bit of the luster, if you will. And the Chargers trying to position themselves, keep losing these type of games. It's like, well, you're not going to be there at the end. If you don't win these sorts of games over New England, but it's the Patriots who get that win.
It's the Patriots who say, we're still alive. We're still a team that can be a tough out. And the Chargers, both of these teams, against these, they're really at this point, I mean, these aren't teams that are headed nowhere, but they are teams that are going to have to scratch and claw to get in the playoffs. And this could be a game that determines that. One thing to point out here, Chargers still playing 17 road games. This was a New England crowd in Los Angeles. And so that's going to be an interesting thing to watch develop as this team tries to do it. Remember, last year, the Chargers lost 45-0. Justin Herbert lost 45-0. They didn't have Brandon Staley, so the result wasn't quite the same. But Bill Belichick still has Herbert's number. It was a rough game for Herbert. And remember, when New England went to Houston and almost lost to Houston, should have lost to Houston probably if Houston had a better kicker. We thought, Houston's a bottom 10 team. I mean, New England, bottom 10 team, or at least bottom half of the league team. But since then, they've really rallied. And remember, they almost beat Dallas. They took care of business against the Jets to have some quality wins. And they go and they beat the Chargers. And it's really a Damian Harris offense. And see, this is not a fun offense for fantasy. It's Damian Harris. It's Damian Harris, and then Belichick says, and it's kind of like what we were talking about the Steelers. It's Damian Harris, and then it's like, we're going to play defense. We're going to get some good contributions from the kicking game, Nick Folk. We're going to get turnovers. Remember, a pick six, a decisive pick six in this one. They also got another Adrian Phillips with 2 interceptions. They get a field goal off of that. The Chargers did have a goal line stand against the Patriots early in this one, so these things kind of balance out. But you look at the New England Seas, they're going to Carolina next week. Well, that should be a win. Guess what they have after that? Cleveland, Atlanta, Tennessee. Here's the tough stretch of their schedule. Buffalo, Indy, Buffalo with a bye in there. Well, they know Buffalo. I mean, maybe Buffalo can handle them now. And then they finish with Jacksonville and Miami. Hey, I mean, maybe we shouldn't have written off this team after that Houston game. Herbert's in a slump. Remember, going into the bye, Baltimore just thumped this Chargers team on both sides of the ball, made them look powerless. Now Belichick frustrates him. Next week, you got Philadelphia. So hopefully that's whenever the Chargers get this thing going again. Super Bowl favorite, no. Favorite in their division, I mean, I don't know. Are the Raiders the favorite? But still, you have this team. It looked like everything was going on the right track. Now these back-to-back losses. And the way the losses went, because, again, it was a late pick six by Herbert. It was a back-and-forth game. By the way, in the backfield, because we're watching this because of Eckler and the hip, Kelly goes from getting the most snaps behind Eckler before the bye to being inactive. And it was Justin Jackson with the big play, like a 70-yard run. Not quite the Jets to take it to the house, but it was a fantastic play. Keenan Allen's back. Mike Williams? I mean, some of it is Belichick's going to take away Williams at your comfort zone, but Williams now, maybe he was a shooting star. We'll see. Next week, we'll see if he gets Darius Slay. Again, that Philadelphia game, that's your test for the Chargers. If they can't beat Philadelphia, then we have to wonder whether this is another team cease that has their past chasing them, ghosts, haunted.
Yes.
Right, but it's their past. And Joey Bosa said earlier when they had pulled out a win, like we thought going into the half and lead in the past, how are we going to blow it? Well, they found a way to blow this one.
Yeah, and all they're doing is keeping the door open for Kansas City.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that thinks Kansas City will be all right. Now, maybe not Super Bowl winner, all right, or even making it to the AFC Championship, but in terms of like making that postseason run, being scary for people, yeah, Kansas City's going to be all right. And it's because of things like the Chargers leaving the door open for them. So thanks for that, Los Angeles. Thanks, Seattle. I don't know. Some transitions are better than others. It is Seattle and it is Jacksonville up next, and 31-7 was the final score. So again, one of those ones where we just kind of get through. You get through with 4 carries for James Robinson. Yeah, okay, because that makes sense. But this one's 17-0 at halftime, so they're down. What can they do? What can they do? Feature Dan Arnold? I mean, okay, whatever. Marvin Jones Jr. only 5 for 35. LaVisca 2 for 13. On the flip side, you see 2 touchdowns from DK Metcalf. See 142 yards from Tyler Lockett. Geno Smith with a rushing touchdown, including those couple passing touchdowns. So this one, it's Seattle and Jacksonville, Bloom. You can't, what's the old saying? Lipstick on a pig, whatever. Right. Like, okay, yeah, there you go. That's what we got.
Yeah, definitely a pig, this offense. Trevor Lawrence did about as little as you can do with 54 passing attempts. James Robinson actually gets a heel injury in this one, so we saw more Carlos Hyde in the second half. Hyde wrapped up short receptions. We'll talk about him on the waiver wire show. Urban Meyer said that Robinson could have re-entered the game, but like you said, was out of hand, completely out of hand. The AAA pass offense, like you said, it was Dan Arnold. Jamal Agnew got a touchdown in this one. No much from Tavon Austin. So the AA offense, I don't know. You try to put AA batteries in a AAA, it doesn't work. I mean, that's just this team, right? It's just not working. Time to start another losing streak, right? See, he finally broke like the 20-game losing streak. James Robinson finally got a win over Miami going into the bye in London. Time to start another losing streak because Buffalo is up next. On the other side of it, it was time to not shut down for your roster, but put Tyler Lockett on the bench. No. Congratulations to everyone who said, you know what? Jacksonville's defense isn't good. I'm going to play Lockett anyway. Because we did see Geno Smith with more time to throw. We saw Geno Smith hitting DK Metcalf on a couple of touchdowns. And what you like seeing from Geno Smith is that he knows, like, just put the ball around DK Metcalf above the rim. He's going to find a way to do it. He's a player with a lot of skill and a lot of subtlety to his game, but also just that physical dominance. Didn't get much from Alex Collins. And you kind of feel bad for Seattle and Geno because Geno comes in and they lose to the Steelers and the Saints by a field goal. There's no shame in that. There's no shame in playing those teams close. Geno Smith, for his flaws showing in those games and showing why he's never become an established NFL quarterback. And this one he showed that, hey, give him some good players and he can make some things happen with those players. Is Seattle season over? Probably, but they're going into their bye. They get Russell Wilson back maybe in week 10, and they come right out of the bye and face Green Bay and Arizona. So we're going to know where the Seattle team is. Like, again, we know where the Jacksonville team is. And, Geno Smith, you can do worse as a backup quarterback. And if a few things have broken their way, maybe we'd be talking about him having 3 straight wins and keeping the season really alive.
Really alive.
Not alive. Nothing. No life here.
No life here. Broncos and Washington football team. Hey, boy. Okay. Broncos and Washington football team. I'm writing down, Bloom. I'm writing down timestamps because they're very helpful for YouTube. But I'm also writing down, kind of like how Teddy Bridgewater on his wristband, he had like, have fun, smile, completion is a good thing. I'm writing down, be nice to the Broncos so they don't get mad at you anymore. I'm writing that on my wristband that is non-existent. But yeah, I mean, 17-10, they win over, you barely beat Taylor Heineke. And what the hell was that last offensive series? Now, nobody watched this game. Not many people cared about this game. It was the least gambled on game of week 8. So the last series, Bloom, I don't know if you watched it because, well, like I said, nobody watched this. Less than a minute to go. The Washington football team has 3 timeouts. So you're like, okay, you run the ball, you sit on, you do victory formation and just punt. They're going to have like 10 seconds left, right?
Right.
They'll have to drive the majority of the field. So they run, Javonte Williams fumbles, my man Dalton Reisner picks it up. Okay, crisis averted. Now just victory formation, sit on the ball, they'll call their timeouts, you still punt. They have like 20 seconds left. Then they do a pass, a rollout, and Teddy throws it away, basically. Terrible throw when he could have just slid in bounds, kept the clock. Well, they would have called a timeout, but still, like, hey, they get to save a timeout because Teddy just throws an awful pass. And then the next play, Melvin Gordon runs, he fumbles. I mean, and they give the ball back to Washington. They've barely taken any time off the clock. And now Washington's within striking distance. Good thing Taylor Heineke was targeting Maleficent in the first row of the Mile High Stadium rather than actually targeting one of his players in the end zone. So this one, okay, it's a win. It's an ugly win for the Broncos. Melvin Gordon with a big day, a couple of touchdowns. They still don't run, like, okay, whatever. Jerry Jeudy's back, 4 for 39, right, okay. Tim Patrick, 3 for 64. Cortland Sutton, 2 for 40. So you see that difference there. Noah Fant's going to get his ass benched. Sorry. I mean, Albert Okwuegbunam's back. And you saw Fant now has been penalized 7 times this season. 7 times. And you saw just the lackluster effort as a blocker, getting Teddy killed. Like, you can't do that. And Teddy was sacked 4 times in this one. Fant responsible for at least one of those. Alberto's back. He gets more snaps. You see Fant just kind of fade into the background. So just mental note on that one as we continue to look over this one. J.D. McKissick, probably the biggest game on the Washington side. Right. Although Jarrett Patterson, if you're a third-string running back, Denver's going to let you run, whether you're Dearness Johnson or Jarrett Patterson. By the way, it's Corey Clement next week against the Cowboys. Just note, although he won't get anything because Zeke and Tony Pollard will do anything they want. Right. Rush defense isn't great. So, again, this is one of the stinkers on Halloween. And what I've been telling Broncos country is like, hey, you got to win. It's an ugly win. And Bloom, honestly, this is the recipe, not the way Pat Shurmur does it necessarily. But here's the thing. With this win, now Melvin Gordon won't get traded to the Titans. Okay, I know the chat room was asking me about that. Like, is Melvin Gordon going to get? No, they won. Had they lost? Maybe. That would be a possibility, but I've been told the Broncos aren't going to be players. They're not going to be players at the trade deadline. I said that a week or 2 ago is when I learned that information before I made a mad Bloom. Anyway, let's talk about this game, but briefly, because again, this is like, what are we doing? It's Washington against Denver. They barely win.
Do they have, Cecil, you know what my note for this game is? Embrace mediocrity. Right. From a fantasy standpoint,
shoot for mediocrity.
Right. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like mediocrity. We finally
let's just be average.
Right. Exactly. Your team's gonna be below average. Antonio Gibson. I don't know what we're gonna do with him. As we saw Jarrett Patterson, he was off the injury report, I think, this week. Is there a quarterback change coming? Washington's going into their bye. Is there a quarterback change coming? Yeah, we've seen Taylor Heineke. I don't know that Kyle Allen's going to be that much different, but you wonder. You still have J.D. McKissick. You still have Ricky Seals-Jones, although Logan Thomas could be back after the bye. And he didn't do much. And of course, you have Terry McLaurin, who needs the rest. I think he just needs the rest. I think this dude plays banged up. Yeah. And we saw at the end of the year last year. So maybe we see a renewed Terry McLaurin. But they have their bye, and Ron Rivera beat cancer and took this job for this. It was kind of fun last year. They made the playoffs, backed into the playoffs. For Denver, for fantasy, what do we have in this offense? Splitting work, splitting headache. Now with Cortland Sutton back, you have Sutton and Patrick and Jeudy. I'm sorry, with Jeudy back. You have Fant, like you said, Cease, but he has also a partner there in Albert O that maybe can overtake him. But is there anything that's sustainable in this offense week to week? No. I mean, this was the Washington pass defense, and there wasn't one good play in the Denver passing game. Not even Teddy Bridgewater. So the team's got 4 wins. In some ways, Cease, it's like a nightmare for Broncos fans because the 4-4 record makes it seem like, okay, they've got some things figured out. They've got to figure out. No, burn it to the ground. Start over, but there's nobody to make that call, Cease. And maybe it'll be on fire. It'll be burning next week against Dallas.
Yeah, and by the way, they did that no good plays from the passing game against the number 32 passing defense.
Right.
So, anyway, FQD says Broncos are in NFL purgatory. Yeah. That is correct, my friend. Let's move on from that stinker of a game. And as I jot down another timestamp, why is my pen not working? Okay, it is the Buccaneers over or against the Saints, not over 36-27. It's those crafty Saints that get the win. And this is one of those where we can stretch out a little bit, right? A little better than the last game because there's so much to talk about. And Brady and company starting slow, 7 points in the first half. They make that surge with 20 points in the second half, but it's way too late. And, well, New Orleans is still surging as well. They do it because Tom Brady throws 4 touchdowns, and Godwin gets one, and Cyril Grayson gets one, Mike Evans gets one, and that Evans battle is always fun to watch in these Tampa Bay and New Orleans. Gio Bernard gets one as well. Gronk was back, doesn't matter, 1 target, no catches. Then on the New Orleans side, we see Jameis Winston go down. In comes Trevor Siemian, he's not a slappy. Tossing, 1 touchdown anyway, but Alvin Kamara leading the way on the ground. So, and you see a touchdown for Traquan Smith. Alex Armagh gets the other touchdown there as well. So lots to get to in this one because statistically you're going to look at this box score and nothing's going to blow you away. But this was a hard-fought game. This was an energetic game, as it always is. Tampa makes that charge back. New Orleans with Trevor Siemian says, no, not today.
No. Look, Tampa goes into their bye 6-2. And I don't care. In this NFL, in the 2021 NFL, you go into your bye 6-2. You're happy. Things are on track. But the Saints still have Tom Brady's number. Remember, he comes into the Superdome, loses week 1 last year, and then has maybe the most miserable game of his career against the Saints. Then in the playoffs, it wasn't Tom Brady leading them to the win. It was unforced errors by the Saints, a Jared Cook fumble, some Drew Brees interceptions, and it was the running game. They come into this one, and again, this Saints defense has his number. And one thing you can say for the Saints defense, it's like the other black and gold team, our Steelers. Sometimes the defense says, we got this. We got this, right? So, let's step through some fantasy stuff real quick. Brady, of course, is going to remain a fantasy force. With Mike Evans locked up with Marshawn Lattimore, it was a Chris Godwin game. Gronk comes in, leaves with back spasms. Yeah. So we'll see. Bye. You wonder, Cease, for a month there, it looked like we got old Gronk back, but all good things, right? So we'll see. I don't know, man. I wonder if this is Gronk's body saying, okay, I gave you that one last burst of good football. I got a ring, got some fantasy glory, and I just wonder if he's going to hold up at this point. Something we'll think about. And they're going to get Antonio Brown back maybe over the bye. Tyler Johnson was okay. Again, they'll take it at 6-2. Moving over to the Saints side, what an emotional game. First of all, Bucs Saints is going to be an emotional game, period, anyway. Okay? That's going to be an emotional game no matter what. What do you get this week? Mark Ingram comes back. I don't think we understand how much that meant to this team. I don't think we can possibly understand. See, it's like one of your family members coming back from war or something. The elation. This team was elated to get Mark Ingram. And Mark Ingram looked like a reborn player in this game. Now, all of a sudden, we are going to talk about Ingram on the waiver wire because you could tell that everything was right. Then you also have Jameis Winston. Oh, man. Just a terrible scene, right? He gets twisted. His leg gets twisted under him. Looked really bad. He tries to walk off of the field. Can't even do it, right? And isn't that a perfect picture of Jameis Winston? He takes a terrible leg injury, tries to walk off the field, can't put weight on it, crumples to the ground. His teammates have to help him off. See, here's something you don't see very often. How often when a player's in the blue tent do you see his teammates going in and out of the blue tent to check on him?
That never happens. It's almost like you're not supposed to go in the blue tent.
Right. They love Jameis Winston. Mm-hmm. They love him. Look, from the outside looking in, we might think he's corny or just, a goofball. They love Jameis Winston. They love Jameis Winston. For fantasy, obviously, we're kind of back to, well, Michael Thomas might come back soon. It's Alvin Kamara and nobody else, which is kind of where we've been with this offense. Anyway, enter Trevor Siemian, not a slappy, like you said, Cease, not exactly going to stretch the field, doing enough in this game. And we're going to see if Taysom Hill's ready from his concussion. Obviously, we're going to talk about him on the Waiver Wire show. But you drive down the field, it's 27-26. Tampa's in the lead. Drive down the field, and they have to settle for a field goal. They don't have Will Lutz, but at least they have Brian Johnson, I think, makes the field goal, 29-27. But you give the ball back to Tom Brady with a minute and 40 left. You just gave the ball back to Tom Brady with a minute and 40 left, up 2 points. Come on. No. PJ Williams says, I got this. We got this. Pick six. And see, it's the kind of game that, because we were out trick-or-treating in New Orleans during this game, and the game was on in everybody's house. Like, lots of people are like, they're like handing out candy and like looking over their shoulder, And I remember the moment out there on Esplanade when it rippled through like everybody out there, like they did it, because everyone's like, everybody is aware of what's happening, even though you're out there trick-or-treating. They did it. And this team, I think that we just see the immense emotional investment this team has, starting with Jameis Winston. And we can say, I say this as a New Orleans resident now, no matter what happens in the season, it gave us this game. And because it happened on Halloween, people will say, do you remember the Halloween game? Do you remember all? Because no matter what, you hung it on Brady, man. You hung up pick six. How many times have we had? It was like the Miami game that blew up the Death Star game. That's the only one I can think of, Cease, where a Tom Brady pick six decides the game. I mean, let's make a portrait of that and put it up on the wall forever, no matter what it leads to. And again, the emotion, Ingram's back. You lose Jameis Winston, and you come out of it at the end and you beat the Buccaneers. And next week, you get the Atlanta Falcons. And see, so I want to just do a quick aside here, because in New Orleans, 28-3 is like, it's a rallying cry, right? Well, what does 28-3 really mean? Well, it's Atlanta sports. I'm sorry, Atlanta sports fans. We love you all. We love all of our people, But 28-3 signifies that Atlanta sports history is horrible. It's just so not even gut-wrenching. It really is Lucy in the football. It really is. And meanwhile, see, so I'm going to do a baseball take here. Last night, the Braves, who had not lost in the postseason, in this baseball postseason, they have a chance to win 3 in a row at home and win the World Series against the Astros. What happens? First inning, grand slam. They go up 4-0. Oh, you feel it. Oh, this is going to be our night. Right? I mean, the Braves, like at home, like the fans, this is our night. The Astros scratch and claw back to make it 4-4. The Braves make it 5-4. The Astros say, no, we're not done yet, and make it 9-5. And then now the series goes back to Houston. It's 3-2 Braves, but the Braves probably feel defeated. The Braves probably feel like they won this World Series, and then they didn't. And how do you get back off the deck after that? So you think of 28-3, the amazing rivalry between the cities of Atlanta and New Orleans, the teams of Atlanta and New Orleans, and meanwhile, the sports consciousness of Atlanta right now is in another waking nightmare. So we'll see what comes of that. But sports, man, I mean, it's just the intense emotions flowing, the collective emotions that we all experience together that feed off of each other. We saw it in the Tennessee Indy game. We saw it in this game, this divisional battle, Cease, right? Where the teams know each other so well. There's always so much on the line, even though it's just one game in the standings. And this one felt like that for the New Orleans Saints.
A rare Sunday night football recap here on the Audible to tie a bow on today's show. 2016, Cowboys over the Vikings. Cowboys without Dak. Okay, we'll talk about it. And plenty of Mari Cooper, plenty of CeeDee Lamb, dash of Cedric Wilson there as well. And then, and a little bit of Zeke. A little bit of Tony, not much. Flip side of that, Adam Thielen gets it done. Justin Jefferson, not as much. Dalvin Cook, okay, fine. 78 yards on the ground. And, are you really starting Kirk Cousins? I don't think so. So the Cowboys side is interesting just because without Dak. So let's talk about this game, Bloom, and then tie a bow on this show.
Yeah, see, can I just do a Von Miller traded to the Rams?
Where's my phone?
All right, let's get through this game.
Okay, let's get through the game, Bloom. We got work to do.
Yeah. Cooper Rush makes some great plays. Cedric Wilson, one of the best throws of the year. And if you played Amari Cooper and Lamb and not Dalton Schultz, you were happy with that. It was Dallas' Super Bowl favorite because without Dak Prescott, they still get a good road win and they get a nice tune-up next week against Denver. Minnesota, is their defense any good? Again, they held Ezekiel Elliott in check, but not Cooper Rush in the passing game. Dallas's defense is good. Adam Thielen did okay, but not Justin Jefferson. Tyler Conklin got some catches here. They kept Dalvin Cook in check. This is a balanced team. This is a team that can win without Dak Prescott, win on the road against a team that plays good teams well. Now Minnesota, who's had some gut-wrenching losses of their own, go to Baltimore. No more margin of error anymore. And I know what Cecil's going to be working on for the rest of the day.
Yeah, again, are we done? We're done. Sorry, everybody. Here we go. Live show. Thanks, everyone, for watching. He's Sigmund. I'm Cecil. YouTube things. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Notification bell. Von Miller traded to the Rams. Okay, got to run. Everyone, stay tuned. Peace out and stay frosty.